For 3 years, I believed I was in love, but what started as a passionate, whirlwind romance slowly turned into a suffocating nightmare. I, 26 female, have been with my boyfriend now ex for 3 years. In the beginning, things were amazing. He was sweet, caring, and attentive. I thought I had found the perfect partner, someone who truly understood me. The first few months were full of laughter, late-night talks, spontaneous dates, and that intoxicating feeling of falling in love. We shared inside jokes, whispered dreams of the future to each other, and made promises that felt unbreakable. Every message from him made my heart race, and every moment together felt like something out of a movie. We had minor disagreements, but nothing out of the ordinary. I believed we could get through anything together, but then things started to change. At first, it was subtle. He would make small comments about what I wore, questioning if my outfits were appropriate. If my dress was a little too short or my top a bit too tight, he would sigh and say, "Are you sure you want to wear that? I just don't want other guys staring at you." If I was a few minutes late responding to a text, he would joke about me ignoring him, adding a LOL at the end to make it seem playful. But there was always an underlying tension, a silent pressure that made me second-guess myself. I brushed it off, thinking he just cared deeply about me. As time passed, his temper became more noticeable. It was like walking on thin ice, never knowing when it might crack beneath me. He would get angry over small things: if I wanted to have a girls' night out, if I didn't call him before bed, or if I disagreed with him about something trivial. A conversation that started as playful banter could escalate into an argument within seconds. His words became sharper, his tone harsher. "You always have to argue with me, don't you?" he would say, his voice dripping with frustration, eyes dark with something I couldn't quite place. "Why can't you just listen for once?" At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was being too difficult. Maybe I needed to be more understanding. After all, relationships take work, right? I convinced myself that if I just loved him enough, if I compromised more, things would go back to how they used to be. I started overanalyzing everything I said, making sure my words wouldn't set him off. I tried harder to be the perfect girlfriend, bending over backward to accommodate his moods. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. And the more I tried to keep the peace, the worse he got. He started controlling who I talked to, commenting on my friends, making me feel guilty for spending time with anyone but him. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow, insidious process, one I barely noticed until I was completely wrapped in his grip. At first, it was little remarks, casual enough to seem harmless. A slight frown when I mentioned an old friend, a muttered "I don't know why you still talk to her" when I laughed at a message. Then it turned into pointed accusations, backhanded comments that left me questioning my own judgment. He made me believe I was betraying him simply by maintaining friendships. Before I knew it, I was canceling plans, making excuses, telling my friends I'm just too busy when, in reality, I was too afraid of how he would react. The invitations stopped coming. The group chats grew silent. I watched as my social circle shrank, leaving me with no one but him. And the worst part, I thought I was doing the right thing. I convinced myself that love required sacrifice, that my relationship was worth more than a few nights out or an old friendship. Then came the disrespect. He started calling me names during arguments, his words sharp like daggers, each one slicing deeper than the last. "You're so dramatic," he'd sneer when I tried to express my feelings. "You're acting crazy. No wonder no one else would put up with you." Every insult, every dismissal chipped away at me, making me doubt my own worth. He had a way of twisting things, turning every confrontation into my fault. If I cried, he'd roll his eyes, shaking his head in mock disappointment. "God, you're so emotional. No wonder you can't handle anything." And if I dared to stand up for myself, if I found the courage to push back, he'd make me feel guilty, spinning the situation until I was the villain. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." Why do you always have to ruin everything? The worst part wasn't even the words themselves, it was how much I started believing them. He never physically hurt me, but the emotional wounds he left were just as painful, just as deep. They lingered in my mind, making me question my own reality. I felt like a prisoner in my own relationship, suffocated by his constant criticism, trapped in an endless cycle of self-doubt and apology. Yet, I still stayed, because I thought I loved him. Because I believed that if I just tried harder, things would go back to the way they were in the beginning. But it never did. The final straw came when I told him I wanted to break up. I had spent months agonizing over the decision, wondering if I was making a mistake, but deep down, I knew I had to leave. I couldn't keep living in a cycle of fear and anxiety, constantly walking on eggshells to avoid setting him off. When I finally told him, his reaction was worse than I ever imagined. "Oh, so you're just going to leave me like that, after everything I've done for you?" His voice was cold, his eyes burning with rage. I tried to explain that it wasn't working anymore, that I needed to prioritize my own happiness. But he didn't listen. Instead, he threatened me. "If you leave me, I swear I'll send all your private photos and chats to your family. I'll ruin you. Do you really think they'll look at you the same way after that?" My blood ran cold. I had never been more terrified in my life. It wasn't just about embarrassment, it was about control. He wanted to make sure that if I left, I would suffer. He wanted to keep me caged, trapped in fear, bound to him by the worst kind of blackmail. For a moment, I considered staying, just to keep him from carrying out his threat. But then I realized this wasn't love. It never had been. Love doesn't hold you hostage. Love doesn't threaten to destroy you. So I did what I had to do. I reached out to a friend I trusted, someone I had kept at a distance because of him. I told her everything. She helped me come up with a plan. I gathered every screenshot of his threats, saved every text, made sure I had evidence. Then I went to my family first. I told them the truth before he could twist it. I explained what had been happening for the past 3 years, the emotional abuse, the manipulation, the threats. It wasn't easy, but they listened. They believed me. Then I blocked him on everything, changed my passwords, made sure he had no way to reach me. The first few weeks were hard. He tried to contact me through different numbers, through mutual friends. But I stood firm. I refused to let him back into my life. And now I finally feel free. It took me 3 years to realize that I deserved better. That love should make you feel safe, not scared. That a relationship should be a partnership, not a prison. Looking back, do I regret wasting so much time on him? Maybe a little. But more than anything, I'm grateful I found the strength to walk away. Because now, I can finally move on without any regrets.